start. So welcome to the latest supporter update. My name's Debs and Pip is also with us, so we'll do some introductions. I'm Woodcraft Folk's Chief Exec, and I'm the sort of person who takes responsibility for our fundraising and helping to support the rest of the teams deliver their work. Pip.
And my name's Pip. I'm the Chair of General Counsel, so I lead Woodcraft Folk's trustee board who manage oversight for all the work staff do and strategy for the organisation.
Excellent. And in this session, the whole point is to try and keep members and supporters updated with what's happening across the organisation. We're going to look to enthuse you about the things that we are doing, and particularly as we are now reopening and recovering following COVID restrictions. We will ask you some questions and feedback. You are encouraged to ask questions throughout the session. If you want to ask a question, simply unmute yourself and ask. You can use the chat and we'll do our best to keep on top of what's happening in the chat. And I can see that there's a chat thing happening right now. What does it say, Pip? And we will respond to your questions as we go through.
Sandra's just saying that they might have to turn their camera off at some point.
Okay, cool. So over to you, Pip.
So yeah, this is the things we're going to go through. We're going to say thank you. That's the first thing I'm going to do, and then we're going to talk about look at the groups, the memberships, our projects, our centres, where we are at with funding and finance, our plans for next year, and then looking forward to Woodcraft Centenary in 2025. So our birthday, exactly, it's very exciting. And then we'll take any questions. And as Deb said, if you have any questions throughout, please do feel free to interrupt, as Deb's dog is demonstrating perfectly. Oh. So we like to start these by saying thank you, and it's a particularly important time to say thank you as we are. Are you finding me really quiet? Oh no, hang on, I know how to solve that. So I will just stall very momentarily, and you can look at my. I have to move things a bit.
And I apologise for my dog. Somebody came and knocked on my door.
Is that much louder? Am I suddenly booming? Yes, great. Good. I don't know why my computer does this. So, yes, thank you. We are just getting to the point where groups and districts are able to meet in person again. Our centres are taking groups and bookings again. And our staff are able to support people in delivering Woodcraft Folk activities that aren't taking space on a 2D screen, which I know is something they're very excited about, something we're very excited about, and hopefully something you're very excited about too. Our volunteers and our staff and everyone have put in a huge amount of effort into making Woodcraft Folk available to young people throughout all the difficulties the last 18 months have thrown in our general direction. So thank you for all the energy and effort that has made that possible. The creativity of delivering online and the creativity in reopening. Some groups have been reopening, meeting in parks or outdoor spaces and working within the sometimes confusing framework of COVID regulations, which I know Owen has tried very hard to interpret in a way which makes sense for you, and that our members have had to do the same in interpreting that in a way that feels safe and feels logical for the way their groups operate. It's been really exciting to have some camps happen this summer. So we had our Adventurer Camp took place across several different locations in the UK, something we've never done before, but we felt was necessary to kind of, because of coronavirus. So that was really exciting to make sure that went ahead, and so thank you to everyone that was involved in that. And we also had a Pioneer national event for the first time, so that took place at Biblin's this summer. So yeah, thank you to our volunteers, thank you to all our staff who have kept us going through this period, and thank you to everyone who's contributed to allowing us to continue our work. So particularly we've got 355 people who donate above their membership fee to Friends of the Folk, so contribute because they can regularly to the folk, and that is really valuable to allowing us to continue to deliver in these different ways for young people across the country.
Thank you, Pip. We always start with the thank yous. I'm going to give you a little bit of a headline about where we're at with groups and our projects. As Pip has said, all of our volunteers have been working really hard to reopen group. We currently have nearly 240 groups that are open and are meeting face to face. We currently, unfortunately, had to close 22 groups in 2021 who felt that they didn't have the capacity to reopen after the COVID restrictions, and we have a further 13 that are due to open this month, so hopefully that will look far more positive. What's really interesting since restrictions started to be lifted in April and May is that we've seen an unprecedented number of new group inquiries. So we're currently dealing with 45 new group inquiries in places where we've never had Woodcraft Folk groups before. So we're looking at new ways where we can support those groups to grow. And we have opened 13 new groups since September. It might be unlucky for some, but actually that's really, really positive that even in the current uncertainties, we're able to set up new groups. Most of those new groups have been alongside existing districts, and a lot of them have been DF groups, which is rather unusual. In Woodcraft Folk, when we open a new group, it is often an elfin group. So to be opening new groups at the top end of the age range is really, really positive. And we're also seeing a slow increase back to our pre-COVID levels of adult members. We saw a 21% reduction in adult members between 2020 and the beginning of 2021. So we are hopeful that by we get to the end of this calendar year, we'll be back to where we were at the end of 2019 before COVID impacted. So as well as of groups reopening and rebuilding from the ground up, we've been delivering a number of projects, and Pip's absolutely right. The staff are really pleased to be able to do face-to-face work again. We've started doing residentials with children and young people. So last week was the first face-to-face meeting of the Kids Got Rights project, and they have lots of plans to deliver activities to local groups and districts, and we'll even be coming along to the General Council meeting in November to deliver children's rights workshops to our trustees. Look forward to that one. And we have throughout the pandemic delivered the Green Influencers scheme in schools in Bradford and Leeds. That's a scheme aimed at 10 to 14-year-olds and supporting them to develop their own green social action projects. And they've been involved in recycling, they've been involved in tree planting, and also being involved in doing energy audits of their school, and then lobbying their decision makers at their school to improve how they look after the environment and to reduce their carbon footprint of their school community. Some of you may have been involved in the Ingenious project. We reached over 500 young people through online Zoom lessons into schools with the Ingenious project, working with 50 engineers, and that project should have taken place in fields in 2020, and in the end took place all online throughout 2020 and 2021. But the engineers that we have recruited will return once more to camp and actually deliver the original project outcomes at Common Ground next summer. As well as these projects, this summer we delivered 5 weeks of activity in Hammersmith and Fulham, which was funded as part of the Marcus Rashford Holiday Activities and Food Programme. And we engaged with 183 different families, providing activities focused on cooperation, climate change, children's rights, and providing meals every day to children aged between 4 and 16. We also taught them about food, and not just about healthy eating, but about food miles and sustainable menus. And it was really interesting, and the activity pictured here is all about food miles, and they were looking to where all the ingredients for chocolate came across the globe, and obviously followed by chocolate. We did also do some healthy eating during the programme. We were very lucky. Last night was the first meeting of the new group in White City, which has grown out of the contacts we made with families as part of this holiday programme. And we hope that that group will flourish under the umbrella of Ealing District, which is its neighbouring district. So that's a really positive story of 5 weeks of staff-led activity engaging children from disadvantaged communities in Woodcraft Folk activities, and now we're able to work with volunteers and some of the families who attended that group to launch a brand new pioneer group in that community. So that's a positive story I'm really proud of. As well as our projects, I think I'm going to hand over to Pip to talk to you about our centres. And this lovely photo from Cudham.
I've not seen that photo before. I think it's great. Were they painting things?
They were painting things, yeah, and having fun, clearly.
Lovely. So yeah, we're really happy to announce that all of our centres are now open. They've all been taking bookings over the summer, and they're kind of slowly getting back to some form of normality, which is great. We have had a head of centres, which is a new role that the trustees created in the staff restructure that took place over the last year. We've had our head of centres, Andy, in place for 3 months now, who is providing kind of linked up working between the centres and kind of strategy that's going to work across all of them for the first time ever. So our centres are working together now, and Andy's just been carrying out an audit of the sites to ensure that they're at the highest health and safety standards possible, and to ensure that we are reaching the full potential of all of those sites, and that they're reaching out to as many different communities around where they are, so that as many young people can experience Woodcraft Folk through our centres, because that is how a vast majority of young people actually experience Woodcraft Folk, through attending our centres, whether that's with different groups or as a part of a school. I've already mentioned the camps that took place in August. They took place across our centres, and it's really nice to be able to use our centres in that way to deliver a kind of event nationally. So Venture Camp took place across different centres, and then, as I mentioned before, we had Pioneer Camp at Biblins. It's been great to welcome groups back to our centres, and the latest restrictions that were lifted at the end of July have kind of brought our centres back to how they were operating before, which is really exciting that they can do that. We've been working with the centres to project how they're going to do, and trying to be cautious as much as possible with looking forward and anticipating what kind of businesses they're going to get. But we're really excited. It says on here that Biblins has hosted nearly 5,000 bed nights for youth groups in April to September 2021, which is amazing. That's within COVID restrictions. Think about the possibilities without them. And that our centres have been overperforming what we anticipated they'd be able to achieve in this period, which is really exciting. So we're, fingers crossed, heading for a small surplus across our centres this year, which is very exciting news.
I can say it's incredibly exciting, where we had forecasts for our centres to make a loss of nearly 40,000, and it looks like that they will be turning a small surplus at the end of this year. And I think one of the reasons is that groups have been so desperate to get back together that the residentials that should have taken place in 2020 have all been rescheduled, and our centres are incredibly busy at this moment in time, fitting in missed opportunities while people reconnect with their youth organisations. Just out of a comparison, in 2019, Biblins hosted over 20,000 bed nights for children and young people. So 5,000 is a good number, but it shows just how it's been operating below its capacity because of those COVID restrictions. But if we remember, only at the end of July could Woodcraft Folk groups have more than 4 children going away on a residential experience, and they couldn't have any until that 12th of July date, where schools were able to go away slightly earlier in their school bubble group. So that those youth groups do include schools too. My news is to tell you also about some funding successes. So we are proud to have some new funders coming to support Woodcraft Folk in the last 12 months. We've had some financial support from a small charity called the Ben's Education Trust. Our centres specifically have benefited from the Julia Hands Rousing Trust, who gave them a COVID recovery grant to help us pay for staff as we reopened and reduced our need to use the furlough scheme. At the beginning of the year, we got a grant from the Guardian Christmas Appeal. So for any of you who followed the Guardian Appeal last summer, last Christmas even, it was all focused on the importance of youth work and the importance of youth organisations. We've also got some BBC Children in Need funding to do some new group development work in Falkirk in Scotland. It's the Ernest Cook Foundation that's funding our Green Influencer Scheme work in Leeds and Bradford. And Jack Petchy has been funding our youth engagement intern, Irini, who's been working in London and Essex since April. We've got some other small funders that have come on board to support Common Ground, and we look forward to their support so that we can put together a really good quality programme for the campers next year. As we've just said, the centres are overperforming, which is really, really positive. We had set their targets quite low because we were unsure at the beginning of the year what restrictions would be in place. So we're really pleased that they've been able to bounce back really quickly at the moment that restrictions were lifted. We have seen a reduction in membership and group income, but that is beginning to increase as groups reopen, but that's likely to be down on our pre-COVID levels. But we hope that with Common Ground coming around the corner and the number of new groups that we're setting up, that will bounce back again quite quickly. And we're also really pleased to receive legacies. It's lovely when our members remember the folk and leave gifts in their memory. And this year we have received 2 legacies, and we've been informed about another 3rd generous legacy, which will help us be financially sustainable and give more opportunities to children and young people. If you attended the last supporters update, you'll know that we've just begun a partnership relationship with the Co-op Legal Services to provide reduced fee will writing service for our members, and we will be writing out to our members for Will Writing Month, which is November, who knew, to offer that service to our members at a discount. So thank you, and thank you to all those families who remembered Woodcraft Folk. Pip.
So I'm sure you'll be aware that COP26 is taking place across the first couple of weeks in November in Glasgow. I was just thinking back to the first protest I ever went to with Woodcraft Folk, which was the Wave in 2009, if anyone remembers that. Everyone dressed in blue. The whole protest was in blue, and it was organised by the Co-op and people. But protesting about climate change and the climate emergency and standing up for it has been a very important issue throughout a lot of Woodcraft Folk's work, and is arguably, I hope you agree, the most important issue of our time. It's something that we really need to make sure we have a present on, and something that is a big issue and something that young people really want to be heard on, something that's definitely going to affect their futures. And for that reason, we are very keen to have a strong presence at COP26. Woodcraft Folk members have been involved in lots of climate change related projects and activities leading up to it, including lobbying City Council and planting trees. We've submitted responses to the Conference of Youth that's taking part alongside the COP26 summit, and our young members have also been along to talk to the Cooperative Party Conference about the importance of tackling the climate emergency. So in Scotland, we've got members who are hoping to deliver woodcraft activities. There's a wide game happening across Glasgow. There's going to be various artworks in place. We're going to be as involved as possible, allowing young people to engage in that process and engage in the protests taking place around COP26. As an organisation too, we're looking to decarbonise, to look at the way our centres and activities take place and see if there's areas we can reduce our carbon footprint. I know there's plans to hopefully have use the river to some way to power our bidlins. Is that a plan? That's a dream.
There are studies looking at whether or not we can use the river. I'm not sure that we will get away with using the river, but that there are also plans in place to have additional solar panels at Biblins. But people have been testing different ways to get power from the river. It's too complicated. The river changes height too much.
Fair enough.
Which is a shame. And we're also really heavily encouraging all of our groups and districts to get involved in the Global Day of Action. So if you haven't already, we're encouraging you to find your local hub as part of the Climate Coalition to see what activities are happening in your neighbourhood, because it would be wrong to encourage everybody to go off to Glasgow for the COP, but this is a really important issue for all of our young members. And many of you will find that there are activities happening in your hometown, and it's a good way to network and to make Woodcraft Folk better known and understood within your communities. If anybody wants to know the link for how to contact their hub, do email me and I can share with you the contact details, or a quick Google of Climate Coalition local hub will probably find the right page for you. But we've been really excited to make sure that young people's voice is heard around COP26 and climate emergency, because it was gaining momentum before COVID, and COVID has sort of taken over the last 18 months, but actually the issue hasn't gone away, and some of the actions that we'd hoped local authorities would be taking and the government would be taking haven't had the priority that they should have done. So it's now time to make our demands really loud and really clear, and our young people are speaking on lots and lots of panels. We've got some more young people participating at a university panel in 3 weeks' time as the COP is happening around, both in Glasgow and other events happening across the UK. Also wanted to give you a little update about Common Ground. You will know that Common Ground should have taken place in 2020 and it's now, because of COVID, been postponed to 2022. I found this lovely photo, which is from CoCamp, I believe. Common Ground is now taking place at Kelmarsh Hall in Northamptonshire, so we've had to change venues. It is taking place between the 29th of July and the 8th of August. The Common Ground team are currently in the process of ringing around all the district coordinators. So they're telling you, if you have an unknown number ring you, please answer it, because it might be Paulina or Millie who just want to talk to the districts about what support you need to get your group along to Common Ground, whether or not it's equipment, whether or not it's financial support, whether or not it's just information for your parents. There is a whole series of events being taking place to engage our international delegations, and I'm aware that some districts have already started fundraising for their international delegations. It appears that Brexit and COVID have not dampened the enthusiasm of our international delegations, and that they're still intending to come, and it feels that we will have a larger proportion of international delegates than we did at CoCamp, so we expect every village to have an international delegation. So if you're looking to host, by all means get in contact with international at commonground.camp and we can match you up. The other thing that we're looking for is new group buddies. We're aware that some of our groups haven't camped for the last 2 years because of COVID. I also just shared that we're setting up quite a large number of new groups. So we expect for some that Common Ground will be their first experience of Woodcraft Folk camping. So we are looking for experienced campers and experienced districts to buddy up with our new groups to share how we camp the Woodcraft Folk way. So if you're interested in hosting a new group, please do get in touch and let us know, because I think it's really important that we cooperate together and look after those who may be feeling a little nervous of not only camping with children for the first time, but camping at a large, quite substantial length camp with international delegations too. All the information about Common Ground is on their website, so do check it out. Is there anything else that we need to tell people about Common Ground? I think not. You just all have to come is the answer. Other things in 2022 is that we're going to continue with the Green Influences project up until the end of 2022 is when our current funding runs out. We will continue to be delivering the Kids Got Rights project. Its next stage is teaching adults about children's rights and running a campaign to help inform children. This is an international project, and so far all of its work has been done online, but actually next year they'll get an opportunity to meet each other. We've been running life skills projects in schools in London as part of a project with the Greater London Assembly, and we are continuing to work with schools to teach children about cooperation, children's rights and climate change. And we are going into schools and running a 6-week programme and trying to work with parents in the school community to establish new Woodcraft Folks as after school clubs. We're on our 2nd school at the moment, and we have just set up a new group in Canterbury, which I know I said it was in London, and Canterbury clearly isn't, but we started slightly south of London. Other work is the Camelon New Group project happening in Falkirk. We're about to launch an inclusion project in London, which is looking at how we can better support young people of colour and volunteers of colour to engage in our work. We have now decided we have some spare capacity to make some progress with the Biblins bunkhouse. It was something we were talking to surveyors, architects, planning departments at the very end of 2019, and because of COVID, everything stopped. We are now picking those conversations back up, and we have our first planning meeting with Forestry England next week. Nothing's going to change overnight. We have to go through to get planning permission, and we also need to secure the funding to make the change that we want to see, but we are about to submit a new funding bid, which if successful will help us make progress, so fingers crossed on that one. And we're also in the process of applying for some funding for some new group development work, which if successful will see us working in Leicester, Leeds and Glasgow. So watch this space. We have lots of plans. Is that something else in the chat, Pip, that I need to pay attention to?
Awesome. That's
good. Awesome. Awesome's always a good word in the chat. Is this you or me, Pip? I've forgotten. Oh, it's me. So other plans for 2022 is we're relaunching Friends of the Folk. We're giving it a bit of a spin of how we can recognise the contribution that our donors make. We will be looking to target those young people who grew up in the folk, who may not currently be participating, but looking for opportunities to bring them together. So some of you may have engaged in the Kinsfolk Camp, and as part of the relaunch of Friends of the Folk, we'll be looking about what events we can offer to those young people who have fond, well, those young, slightly older people who have fond memories of their time in Woodcraft Folk. We're about to increase the level of training available to our volunteers with regular online workshops, and we'll see a return to residential training at the beginning of 2022, which will be lovely actually, because it's wonderful to get volunteers together to spend some dedicated time learning from each other, which is much easier to do in a residential setting than it is when you are on Zoom. At Common Ground, there is a plan to launch a consultation around Woodcraft Folk's branding and how we present ourselves. This is not necessarily a renaming of Woodcraft Folk, but recognising that actually if we're going to be better known and understood, we need to be really clear about what our brand is and how we communicate to children, young people, families and our partner organisations. And that's how we communicate on both a local and a national offer. So be prepared to engage in that consultation. Other things for 2022, we are going to continue with Dream Big at Home. Dream Big at Home has helped us reach 12,000 people who don't engage in local groups. And therefore, I think it's really, really important that we offer the opportunities to those who are too remote to engage in a group activity. Groups are here to stay. We're not going to get rid of groups, and we're going to be investing in new group development support, but actually trying to diversify how we can share our aims and principles with more young people is a good thing. We're also going to be testing residential experiences for families who do not attend group. We've got our first test next weekend at Biblins, where we have 20 young people who are coming away to do an activity weekend. 50% of them have never been to a Woodcraft Folk group. And it will be an interesting experiment of how do we engage and reach people who are new to the folk, how do we share our principles, and how do we keep to retain them after a fun experience. So at the next supporters update, I look forward to reporting good news on that one. Our centres will also be returning to their traditional Elfin, Pioneer and Venturer activity weekends that they used to run before COVID. So watch this space in the new year for some dates. We'll be fitting them around Common Ground, of course. Centenary plans, that also appears to be me. Our Heading to 100 working group had started to meet before COVID and sort of stopped, and has started to meet again. They are coming up with a work plan of how we can celebrate Woodcraft Folk's heritage between now and our centenary. So next year they're hoping to reissue a second edition of the People's History of Woodcraft Folk. I could put my hand on one on the shelf, but it's a bit too far. They are also looking to do another symposium event celebrating the impact of Woodcraft Folk and how Woodcraft Folk influences the lives of our young members and the careers and the study that they choose to go down. We're looking to do that event in 2023 as a launch towards the centenary. And very, very importantly, we're planning another international camp, which will feel that they've come around quite quickly like buses with Common Ground in 2022. But we can't not do a big camp on our centenary year. So there will be another international camp in 2025. There is a small embryonic working group that has already started to form, who would be keen on any volunteers coming forward to help with that coordination. Our plan at the moment is that it will take place in the same location as Common Ground to make the logistics of organising and contacting easy. And all of that we will confirm after having a positive experience at Kelmarsh as a thing. The other work that the Heading to 100 group is looking at is to produce a new songbook, which not only has the songs, the words and the chords, but also has a narrative about why we sing them and the history of our songs and why they're important to the folk. That working group has lots of other ideas and will be seeking funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund, amongst others. It wants to hold a exhibition of our banners at the People's History Museum in Manchester, which an application has just been submitted. And if that's successful, that will take place in the summer of 2025. We've just been joined by Paulina, who I don't want to put on the spot and say, did Paulina want to share anything about Common Ground? But we've already done it. I can't, where is she? Paulina, did you want to say anything specifically about Common Ground? As you're here, but you're muted and we can't hear you.
Every time. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
There's 2 different meeting links, so therefore we may sadly have somebody on a different video meeting. Yes, I'm happy to talk about Common Ground if you would like me to.
I mentioned it earlier. I said about the dates and the new site and the fact that we were looking for buddies to support new groups, that we were expecting a large number of international delegations and that we are keen to match districts to those delegations, and that some districts have already started fundraising for the pleasure. I also told everybody that you and Millie were ringing people around and they were to answer the call even if they didn't recognise the number. And I didn't know whether or not there was anything else that you wanted to share. I'll
yes.
just flip back to saying what I did say. Oh, that's what I said.
That's a very good summary. Thank you very much. Yes, maybe a couple of points. One is the fact that we have noticed that for trusts and foundations, the Common Ground is quite an attractive project. I would really recommend that this would be a really good time for DFs or any adult volunteers to get involved in raising funds through grants, because it could be a very well, I'll say a relatively small bit of your time investment for quite a handsome amount of money. So it could be a contribution towards camp fees, travel costs, and also some sort of a permanent legacy, including camping equipment. Even if you have some old kit around, it's quite nice to upgrade and be comfortable on camp, not just have the basics and make do with your kitchen gear that you've always had. So that would be maybe one of the more important things. And really expect this camp to be incredibly international. We will have international participants in practically every village, and enthusiasm from far and wide is high, and the pandemic hasn't changed that. And we're pleased to see that some of those partnerships that started in 2019 and 2020 early part are still kind of carrying on. We feel that some of the international young people were very badly disappointed and managed to get to a point of having their first ever passport issued when then the pandemic hit. So now we are in a good position because IFM SCI has centrally been fundraising quite a lot. So there will be a good contribution centrally available for participants who have very high travel costs, for example. So nobody should feel daunted. And we do have capacity here in the central team to help with the fundraising and help you step by step.
Perfect, thank you. The other thing I ended when I said this earlier was that they all had to come, which hopefully you thought the same thing too. Thank you, Paulina. For those who don't know, Paulina is the project manager for Common Ground, but hopefully some of you have met Paulina before. I know that she's attended these meetings to promote Common Ground. Where were we? I was just talking about our centenary plans. Woodcraft Folk has launched a survey about how the members want to celebrate the centenary, and I will put that link in the chat. So if you haven't completed it, do please fill it in, because we will be looking for everything from birthday cake at local groups to potentially doing some more badge work. There is a team of volunteers who are currently looking at the oral history collection and how we can better use that to help run group night sessions for local elfin groups, particularly targeting elfin and pioneer groups. 2025 feels like a long way away. It will come around really, really quickly. But the plan at the moment for the Heading to 100 group is to do something every year between now and the centenary so that we build up to celebrating our history. This is the link, which I don't know when it's on my screen makes it really hard, so I will put it in the chat so you can click on it. But if you have any suggestions, we would love to hear them. If anybody wants to join that Heading to 100 group, they are meeting every other month. They're meeting online at a time that's convenient to the whole group. They're a mixture of members, volunteers, historians, and people who are just passionate about Woodcraft Folk, and everybody would be welcome there. Yeah, drop me a line if you're interested, and I'll put this link in the chat so it makes it easier for you to fill in the survey. There doesn't appear to have been very many questions, so Pip and I would really love to answer your questions if you have any. I'm going to stop sharing for a while and then I can use my chat quite happily. Does anybody have any questions while I just find that link and stick it in the chat?
We like comments too, or just anything you feel like needs to be said. Jenny, you turn your camera on. You look.
Just because I finished eating my dinner, really.
Actually, so I have a question. Several years ago, in one of the hands in, I think it was a hands in activity, we did a lot for what would groups like to see in the 100th anniversary. It might have been around the time of the 95th, and I wondered how much of that had been retained.
It was around the 90th celebration.
Okay.
So 2015 would be the time that you'd
very
it's all in there. Well, most of it sometimes. And yeah, that information has been shared with the Heading to 100 group. We're really fortunate that some of the same people who helped with the 90th celebration are also involved in the 100th. And if the truth be known, there are some people who helped with the 75th anniversary who are also involved in the 100th. It's quite nice.
Yeah.
And we are very fortunate to have people with connections in various archives and institutions. So we wouldn't be getting the exhibition at the People's History Museum if it wasn't for the connections of some of our members. And I think I don't know if anybody ever, it's in your hometown, well, Manchester, the town in which you currently live, Pip. So I don't know if anybody's ever been to the People's History Museum, but it is a fascinating place. And to think that we may have our Woodcraft Folk banners in their main exhibition hall, it's really quite exciting. It still will be a few years away yet, but they're also helping us with some restoration work with some of our very special and oldest banners. And if anybody has any banners in a shed somewhere, get them out of your shed and talk to us about how we can restore them and preserve them for future generations.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If it helps, I'll stop recording so that you don't have to speak on the record.